Homecoming for the SMU Mustangs on Saturday, and the Miami Hurricanes are going to try to crash the party.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's an epic crossover event with SMU hosting number 10 Miami in Dallas, high noon in the East, 11 a.m. Central Time on Saturday. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. He is Grayson Singleton from Locked On SMU, and thank you so much to the everydayers on both channels for making this crossover your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today. On this episode, we'll give you our predictions. We'll talk key players and matchups. And there's some familiar faces from Miami on the SMU side. We'll talk possible injuries this week. And we'll talk about the top storylines. And Grace, I'll start with you. I know SMU is coming off their first conference loss, not only of the season, but their first ACC loss ever. What are you looking at coming out of that Wake Forest game?
I mean, it was Rhett Lashley's worst day as an offensive play caller. That's the prevailing storyline, is that it wasn't a good day for him. And it wasn't a good day for him combined with the fact that the quarterback is banged up. And Kevin Jennings is going to play. That hasn't been a question mark at any point this season. But he hasn't played well ever since he hurt the ankle. Lashley had a pretty bad day. So it's just a big bounce-back week. Can the guys attack practice this week and get up for a top 10 team coming into town? It's homecoming. It's sold out. And can they just muster up enough health? And can Rhett Lashley get back into his bag as a play caller? That's where SMU is right now.
And I definitely respect Rhett as a play caller. He was offensive coordinator at Miami for a couple of years before he went back to SMU to take their head coaching job. So there is a lot of familiarity. And I know that that's a big storyline there. Rhett Lashley, De'Aaron King on the staff, who's a former Miami quarterback for 2 seasons, played under Lashley. You know, other former Miami players, some of which may or not be injured. We'll talk about that in a second. But from the Miami point of view, Grayson, I think big thing for the Hurricanes, and they're 2 games removed from their first loss of the season. 2 weeks ago, the loss to Louisville at home. Miami bounced back with a big second half. The first half was nothing special against Stanford. Big second half. Miami scored 35 unanswered points in the second half to beat Stanford 42-7. And finding consistency for 4 quarters is something the Hurricanes have not done all year long. In certain games, they haven't finished well. Even in victories against Notre Dame and Florida State, they were sloppy down the stretch after starting hot. Stanford game, they started poorly. They finished strong. The Louisville game, they kind of finished strong, but not strong enough, with Carson Beck throwing his 4th interception to seal the deal for Louisville. So Miami hasn't played with consistency. When they've played well, they've looked like world beaters. I mean, before they suffered that first loss, a lot of folks were saying maybe they should be the number 1 team in the country when they were number 2. They never got that high. So finding consistency through 4 quarters, keeping the penalties down, because there have been, the game that they lost against Louisville committed 9 penalties. It was an absolute horror show of execution. Had 11 penalties against Florida State the week prior when they kind of let FSU get back into that game. But on the positive side for Miami, and I think both defenses in this matchup have a lot to be proud of, Grayson, but Miami's defense is playing at a really high level, especially compared to last year when it was the defense that cost them a college football playoff appearance. This year, Miami fans are worried that the offense may cost them that, but Rueben Bain Jr. has led the nation in pressures so far this year on Miami's defensive line. He's been in the backfield constantly. Miami's defensive secondary has also played really well. Keontae Scott, Xavier Lucas especially, and they haven't given up more than 24 points in any game this year, so the defense has played really, really well going up against an SMU defense that also, I know they've given up a ton of passing yards this year, but they've created a ton of turnovers, and that defensive line has been really stout.
The defensive line is the best part of this SMU team. It's been the most consistent part of this SMU team so far. So, in my Wednesday episode of Locked On SMU, we talked about how SMU is going to have to make this offense one-dimensional. And they've got the defensive line to do it, given that all their dudes are healthy and there's one that is a question mark coming in to this game. He didn't play last week against Wake Forest, but if they can do that, okay, now you're kind of on the right path. Now, you brought up Miami and how they haven't played a consistent game for 4 quarters. Neither have the Mustangs. They haven't either. It's one or the other, and generally it's been we start off fast and taper off at the end. That's how they lose the game to Baylor, and that's how TCU kind of ran away from them ran away from them too. And Wake Forest, they didn't play good at any point in the game on offense. But I think this is going to be a game, like you mentioned, who can play the highest level of sustained football for 60 minutes. And we haven't seen either team do it. But that's going to be the team, I think, that is going to come out on top. Can you play good football and win every single quarter? And it's been a prevailing theme on my show. I'm sure as hell has been a prevailing theme on your show as well.
It has. On injuries, I'll start because Miami's is probably shorter than SMU's injury list. Now, the official ACC injury reports are going to come out first on Thursday night and then again on Friday night. So we'll speculate to this point. On the Miami side, there's a certain amount of players that have long-term injuries, but I think the only potential thing that we're going to be waiting for on Saturday to see if he warms up and if he plays is edge rusher Akeem Mesidor, who is super important to what Miami wants to accomplish on their defensive line. I mean, he and Rueben Bain have been arguably the top tag team in the country. Now, Mesidor missed the Stanford game. Since it was against Stanford, Miami was able to get really good production from their backups on that side. Armando Blunt played really well, and so did Marquise Lightfoot. But, this game is going to be tougher, and the games moving forward are going to be tougher. So Akeem Mesidor, who missed the Stanford game with a lower body injury, Mario Cristobal basically said he was like this close to being able to play against Stanford and should play against SMU. Miami fans, though, have learned not always to trust the Mario Cristobal, injury discussions, because if he says a player is good to go, that might mean he's good to go, or it might mean we don't see him for another 2 months. So I think Akeem Mesidor is going to be back this week, which would be a big boost to Miami. And at this time, I don't know of any other regulars on Miami's roster who might miss this game. So the team seems pretty healthy. I was watching SMU against Wake Forest, though, Grayson, and it seems like SMU's dealing with a lot of stuff.
Sit back, grab you a cup of hot chocolate, because this one's gonna take a minute, Alex. I was reading stuff earlier today about this. There's players that are iffy. Now, there's not a whole heck of a lot that's new that are gonna be gone, but they got banged up. I mean, you're talking about defensive end Cam Robertson, who, you're splitting hairs with Isaiah Smith as to who the best edge rusher on that team is, but Cam Robertson is a question mark. Logan Parr, who has been this team's most consistently available and performing offensive lineman at left guard, he's a toss-up for this game. P.J. Williams, the right tackle, has been banged up. He's been in and out over the last couple of games, as has the left tackle, Savion Byrd. Chris Johnson Jr., former Miami Hurricane, and who's been a real spark plug for this offense. He's going to be a toss-up for this week, which really hurts my soul because he's been one of my favorite players this year. Yeah. And, I mean, it's just SMU hasn't had the luck in terms of health this year. They haven't had to lose somebody for an extended period of time, really, since Jordan Hudson went down in the season opener 2 plays into the season. But, I mean, even Matthew Hibner, who was listed as tight end 1 on the depth chart, but Rhett Lashley came out and said he's a question mark too. So it just has not been a good year in that regard, and it seems like they're starting to pile up right now. So I don't know who goes and who doesn't go. That this is going to be an updated situation as we get into Friday afternoon, really.
Well, that is going to keep us all in suspense. But when we come back, for the players who are able to go on both sides, we'll talk about the key players and key matchups for Miami at SMU. It's going to be sold out. It's going to be raucous there in Dallas. It's homecoming for SMU. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this epic crossover episode, Locked on Canes and Locked on SMU. Guys, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything, from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, You can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. We're simulcasting here for the Locked On SMU Everydayers. I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. For the Locked On Canes Everydayers, getting awesome stuff here from Grayson Singleton from Locked On SMU, your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So for key players, this is an important position every single game, but I'm going to start with Carson Beck in this one for Miami for multiple different reasons. Beck has been at his best in play action. His grades in play action are so much higher than in other situations. So, yeah, there's going to be an emphasis on Miami establishing their running game. But if they struggle to do that against a really stout SMU defense who grades out really well against the run, there could be and should be opportunities to hit plays downfield for Beck and weapons like Malachi Toney and C.J. Daniels, who have been really good at receiver this year. But for me, Beck keeping the turnovers down, Grayson, because something that SMU has done exceptionally well. When I first saw these stats, I thought maybe it was a typo, that they've collected 12 interceptions and 8 fumble recoveries already this season. So is that not factual? Did I read that wrong on SMU?
I don't. You know what? I don't think you read it wrong, but reading that off to me just now is like, oh, I didn't even realize that, and I've watched every game this year.
They have turned teams over at a high clip, and of course, Beck has been
12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and a bunch of 8 fumble recovers. Yeah.
So those are really, really big numbers. And when Carson Beck, he's been streaky at times. Like he played lights out against Florida State, played really poorly against Louisville, threw 4 interceptions against Louisville. So keeping the INTs down, and Beck talked about it when an opposing team is giving you zone looks primarily the way that SMU does. They're going to be keeping eyes on the quarterback, trying to pick off passes. So to me, it really starts with Carson Beck. What about for SMU?
You know what's interesting, before I answer that question, you know why it seems like SMU doesn't have as many turnovers as it does? It's because the offense has done such a poor job of taking advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah.
I talked about it on the show a couple days ago that they have done a good job turning people over, but you don't realize to what extent because it's not turning into points. Now,
that makes sense.
I'm glad you brought up Carson Beck, and I'm glad you brought up the play action because key players, Jeffrey M'Ba and Terry Webb, 2 defensive tackles for SMU, and it's going to start with stopping the run. And if you can stop the run and take away where Carson Beck is his best, and that is the play action, all of a sudden your offense becomes one-dimensional and you're easier to guard. Also, with those defensive tackles, Carson Beck, if you go back to that Louisville game where he throws the 4 picks, Carson Beck, like most quarterbacks who aren't really mobile, struggle with and hate pressure up the interior. And Terry Webb had 2 sacks last week. Jeffrey M'Ba has been good rushing the passer. Both of them are good rushing the passer from their defensive tackle positions. So if you can get pressure up the middle, that's where this dude starts to get really uncomfortable and can give you the opportunity to take the ball away. And like you just brought up, SMU's done a good job capitalizing on those opportunities. So that's where I would start with those 2 up the middle, M'Ba and Webb.
And I'm glad you bring them up because that brings up something Miami's going to have to correct because even against Stanford, it was kind of a rough day at the office for center James Brockermeyer, who was giving up a lot of interior pressure. That was something that Stanford was trying to exploit. So Miami's either going to need to scheme around that. Brockermeyer's going to have a really big bounce-back game, or Miami's going to have to figure something else out because they know that interior pressure is coming, or at least they should know. And you kind of hit on it there. I think Miami's rushing offense, which early in the season was dynamite, last couple of games it's been hit or miss. It was almost entirely miss against Louisville. Miami only ran for 60 yards and change, 63 yards. They did bounce back with 199 rushing yards against Stanford, but sort of the Florida State game into the Louisville game created a lot of frustration from Miami fans who have been a little restless when it comes to sort of the simplicity of the running scheme, that everything's going between the tackles, usually between the guards. They wanted a little bit more variety. Miami coaches would say, hey, if we're executing properly, these plays are going to work, and they have worked at times this year. So I think Miami's rushing offense, which hasn't been great lately, going up against SMU's rushing defense, I think that's a really, really key matchup. Are there any other matchups you look at that could decide this football game?
The SMU secondary against Miami's outstanding receivers. And Miami likes to generate plays situationally down the field. They really do. But also, when Malachi Toney gets the ball in his hands, he's a nightmare to tackle. And there's been two things that have plagued SMU's defense this year. Really the only two things. Poor tackling in the secondary and giving up the big play. And they're still susceptible to the big play, but the tackling has improved coming out of that bye week that led into conference play. So one of the keys for SMU's defense, you have to keep a lid on this offense. You cannot just let Carson Beck bomb you down the field to these receivers. If they can make Carson Beck move the ball down the field with the way your defensive line can stop the run, combined with the fall off, that might be a little extreme, but the way that Miami hasn't run the ball as effectively over the course of the last couple of games as they had at the beginning of the season, that gives you the best opportunity to stay in this game up until the fourth quarter and give yourself an opportunity to win it.
Yeah, I think the time of possession is going to be really interesting in this game because with SMU's offensive tempo, but also the offense having mixed success this year, they've been like one of the bottom time of possession teams, where Miami's been one of the top time of possession teams. Miami really likes to shorten games, but that's also going to depend on if Miami can take an early lead, right? If SMU has an early lead, then Miami's going to want to play faster. But I think it's always interesting to see how like one of the highest time of possession teams is going to match up against the lowest. And this is just really like, this is a matchup I was hoping we would have gotten last year in the ACC, because it's almost like, and a lot of Miami fans have respect because we have fond feelings for Rhett Lashley. Like, there is no bitterness. We really enjoyed his 2 years as offensive coordinator at Miami, and there were a lot of familiar faces, Lashley included. Like, what would obviously for Miami, a victory would mean you continue your quest towards a hopeful college football playoff bid. But for SMU, what would it mean to grab a dub against Miami this Saturday?
It would mean your hopes of getting back to the ACC Championship are still alive.
Yeah, they're still in that. That's true.
If they lose this one, now you're 2 games back of Georgia Tech and Virginia. If you can stay 1 game back of them, okay, now you're feeling okay, because we know college football, anything can happen. And SMU is still giving up the second fewest points in conference play. The Hurricanes obviously are number 1 in that department. So they've done some good things. But if you can just stay within a game, Louisville has a loss in conference play. You play Louisville. Miami already has a loss in conference play. You're playing them this week and have the chance to give them a second loss. That way, you hold the tiebreaker as well. So it's really just about controlling what you can control. And at that point, you just leave it up to college football being college football. And as long as you're in position, because Virginia's got a cross-country trip to California on the horizon. Georgia Tech, they've got a couple games where they could have a pitfall as well. So you just got to keep yourself in position and keep yourself hanging around long enough for hopefully college football to do its thing.
That is well said. And college football, if it's taught us anything, especially in the NIL era, it's going to do its thing. And you could expect chaos on any given Saturday.
And that's why that Virginia-Cal game is so intriguing to me.
Yeah, same here. Well, so for Miami against SMU, we're going to give our predictions when we come back. Miami's favored by double digits in this one. It's a big number. Last I checked on the FanDuel app, minus 10.5. So we'll give you our picks when we return. Grayson Singleton, Locked On SMU. Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked on this epic crossover. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship, in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. I'm really racking my brain, Grayson, on making my prediction because, again, like both of these teams, you mentioned the Jekyll and Hyde nature, right? Not having put together 4 solid quarters to this point. So I'm going to let you go first if you want to make your prediction for how it's going to transpire Miami at SMU this Saturday.
I don't think SMU is going to get blown out, but I have a hard time figuring out how they're going to win it because of the health situation. And SMU's been really good when their offensive line run blocks. That has gone by the wayside in the last 2-3 weeks. I mean, it's been a precipitous drop from where they started at the beginning. So now you're putting more pressure on a quarterback who has not just a banged up ankle, a pretty bad ankle at this particular moment in time. So I do think SMU is in position to cover the 10.5, but I think the Canes come out of here with a win. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong, but that's where I'm leaning right now. That's where my football intellect leads me to believe. And by the way, since we mentioned this in the last segment, this just came across my screen. Ooh. SMU forced 5 turnovers against Wake Forest in that game last week. You want to know how many points? Oh, my gosh,
and they still lost. Oh, man.
You want to know how many points they scored off of those 5 turnovers?
Tell me. 0? Oh, no.
They did not score a single point off of a turnover.
Sheesh.
They also forced 8 punts in that game too, Alex.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was that was not exactly must-see TV on the CW. I was watching that game.
So I watched it because obviously I do. Dog. That game was a drag to watch.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, my co-host on Locked On ACC, Kenton Gibbs, always says the CW stands for Carolina wins, because teams from North Carolina always win when they play on the CW against teams not from North Carolina. So
I also was unaware coming into this year that Tom Brenneman is still calling games.
And not all that well.
That No.
Yeah, that and when he called, it was Miami played USF on the CW. It's getting a lot of names wrong. It's like, feel free to do a little prep.
Like I know we don't come on these. I know we don't come on these podcasts to bash announcers, but that operation there is not good.
Yeah. No, but thankfully this one will not be on the CW. This one will be on ESPN, and I'm gonna go again. This is I think Miami wins. It's just hard for me to say whether it's going to be really close or by just over double digits. I just think, to me, Miami looked like they turned a corner in the second half of the Stanford game. They seemed like they were playing kind of with the anxiety coming out of the Louisville game at first. I like the way they finished. I think Malachi Toney, I have no reason to believe he won't have a big game because he's been doing it against everybody he's played against. So I'm going to go 28-14 Miami, where maybe it's like a 1-score game late and Miami gets a late touchdown to cover the spread. So I'm going to go with something like that, 28-14. And like you said, another driving thought for me are all the SMU injuries kind of makes it hard for me to say it's going to be like a 3-point game or something like that.
Right. And here's also the thing, too, that could keep this game close. Miami and SMU are different in that Miami can play really, really good, but equally as bad. SMU, yes, while they certainly have their bads, don't get me wrong, they seemingly stay in this arena of pedestrian to good to pedestrian and a little bad. That's generally where they are, instead of the huge swings that Miami is. So if you catch Miami in a quarter where they're playing god-awful football, that can allow you to keep that game kind of nip and tuck.
Yeah, no doubt. You're right. The ceiling and the floor at times for Miami has been wildly different. Everyone makes
Isn't that just the most Miami thing anyway?
It is. It's the story of my entire life, Grayson. I'm 41 years old, and I've been obviously the first several years were really good because like late 80s, early 90s, all they were doing was winning championships. But in the last 25 years, it's been a little more hit or miss. But huge thank you and shout out to all of the great folks. The Locked On SMU Everydayers, the Locked On Canes Everydayers. Make sure if you're an everydayer for one of the channels, check out the other ones because we're talking about this game all week long on Locked On SMU and Locked On Canes. And thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time on another episode right here on the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.